Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Chemistry Teacher Podcast. I'm Kim, your go-to chemistry coach for engaging teaching strategies and simple solutions to the everyday challenges chemistry teachers face. Let's get this reaction started. Hi, chemistry peeps. Welcome back to another episode of the Confident Chemistry Teacher Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about some review strategies for semester exams. So, as I'm recording this is Thanksgiving break for me. And so, we have our exam starting December 18th. 17th, anywhere, that middle week before Christmas. I just wanted to share with you guys what I do to review for semester exams. And then, of course, as always, if you have some ideas to review for semester exams, then please let me know. So my goal for reviewing for semester exams is for students to actually do some individual or independent studying time in class, but then I also want to keep them engaged and make sure that they are reviewing the content and that they're not sleeping or wasting their time. Now, I know a lot of teachers might take like a whole week to review for semester exams, but there's always so much content to cover in my classes. I really usually just take 2 days to review in class. And then I will give them a practice test about a week ahead of the exam that they can work on their own if they feel like they really need that extra practice for the exam. Okay, so let me just start at the beginning here. So when I write my semester exam, I make a list of topics that are on that exam, and then I do share that list of topics with the students, about a week or two before the exam. Then what I'll do is I will actually make a practice test of about 50-ish questions that the students can answer that's going to help them prepare for that exam. I used to just make my semester exam from the test generator and then the questions that I didn't use as the practice exam. So I usually think that kids do better when they have actual questions to answer than just the list of content, because I want them to have that practice of, using the content themselves. So I prefer a practice test over just a list of topics that they're going to do. And so, like I said, I used to use a test generator, but now we can't use the test generator at school anymore. So what I do now is I actually take screenshots of my semester exam, and then I give ChatGPT those screenshots, and then I ask it to make me a 50 question practice test for the students that include open-ended, multiple choice, and some matching questions as well. So I think I mentioned in the past on a previous episode that ChatGPT is really helping me out, and especially since I don't have that test generator anymore. So as I mentioned, I give that practice test 1 week before the exam. So those kids that know that they need a really good grade on that exam, they can work on it. I also do not collect this practice exam because up in the front of my classroom, I have the answer key to that practice exam. So if those kids are really let's say I give it to them on a Monday, they might be able to check their answers on Tuesday. Now, I do let them look at it, obviously, so that they can check their answers, but I don't let them take pictures of it. It's kind of just one of my ways to make sure that they're not just filling it in and thinking that they did a lot of studying. And then, as I mentioned, those 2 days before the semester exam, I try to break it up as a mix of independent work and group work, or kind of a more active learning. So we always start off with a warm-up question. I love my warm-ups. I really feel like the students learn a lot, and they've mentioned to me that the warm-up questions is like when they're getting all their really good review and focused practice time. So I'll usually choose a question or maybe a similar free response question to what's going to be on the semester for one of the warm-up questions. Then I have the students, and let me remind you guys, I'm on a 50-minute, I think it's 52-minute class period. So we'll take about, after the warm-up, which maybe takes 5 to 10 minutes, then we'll do 15 to 20 minutes of seated practice. And so they're working on their practice test, or they might be working like on a specific skill that they need for the exam, like dimensional analysis or Lewis structures or even graphing, something along those lines, maybe filling out like a graphic organizer or something like that that's going to help them study for the test. So in my ideal world, I usually tell the kids, I want you guys to sit silent for 10 minutes and work on the activity yourself. And then I'll give them 5 to 10 minutes where they can ask their neighbor. Again, they're still staying in their seats. I'm going to be honest, and maybe this makes me a bad teacher. By this time of the semester, I am so tired and I have so much grading that needs to get done or prep for the next semester that needs to get done, is that I just don't have the energy at this point to like be up front teaching the whole time. So that's why I like this strategy of like half the period they're working on their own, and then the other half the period, probably even more than half the period, like I am teaching, but I'm not teaching the whole 50 minutes that the class period is. And then the next thing, as you probably could have guessed, is then we do 15 to 20 minutes of either a group or some type of active practice or some type of review game. So now let's talk about those review strategies that I might use in that second half of the class. And I was actually going to call this podcast like, how do I review for quizzes, tests, and semester exams? So these are all great ideas to review for those other types of assessments, but I just wanted to give you guys like a real life look of like what I do in my class. So I'm just going to mention a bunch that I use for reviewing for quizzes, tests, and semester exams. Choose which works for your vibe. So as I mentioned, I already make that practice test. In the past, I have had kids do flip books when we've had more time. And so like a flip book, so flip books, each page of the flip book, they have to answer a different question or it's like on a different topic. I've also done that for like unit exams for like chemical bonding or for like electrons if I have time for those flip books. And then I mentioned I am a big fan of graphic organizers. So for example, I'm sure we've all done this before when we're talking about the properties of solids, make a graphic organizer for ionic compounds, covalent compounds, ionic compounds. No, I said that right. Ionic compounds, covalent compounds, and then metallic compounds. Or I guess we call them molecular compounds for the covalent ones. I think that's why I stumbled there. Then I mentioned that my daily warm-ups are a huge and really good review. So especially like if we have a quiz that day, I'll give them a question or questions for the warm-up that are going to be very similar to the ones that they're going to see on their exam or their quiz. I also, another review thing that the last couple of years my kids have been totally digging are making slide decks. And so like they have the problem or the question on the first slide and then the answer on the second slide. So some students prefer just to work through them individually, but other students will like to work with a partner. And I'll tell them to keep track of the points. Like I'll say like, question number 1, partner number 1 answers. If they get it right, they get a point. And then they can look at the answer together and figure out what went wrong. And then partner 2 would answer the second question, obviously, and then they can keep track of points. And then I do give the kids like a little reward. In my class, I have a stamp and it has a turtle on it because turtles are my favorite. And the turtle stamp is worth 2 points extra credit. So in my class, it's not huge, but they love the stamp and they love the idea of extra credit, or they can get a piece of candy. So there's like a little competition, kind of a little more fun built into that idea. I'm sure we've all done some whiteboarding. For some reason, it's way more fun for kids to solve problems on a whiteboard than it is on a paper. And so again, I might just have like 2 partners work together on a set of problems, but they're going to solve them on the whiteboard. I also will do like whiteboarding games where each group, I'll like number them off like 1 through 8. I usually have 8 groups in my class. I'll have them put the group number in one corner of the whiteboard, and then I'll have them put the number of points that they earn in the other one. And so instead of a winner takes all kind of thing, I'll tell the kids that I'll give how many ever points they earned as extra credit. So you might have that one team that totally does have 7 points, but you do have that one team that has 2 points. And 2 points is better than no extra credit points. And then that encourages those groups that really are behind to still keep participating because they know whatever points they get, that's going to be extra credit. And then just as like a side note, kind of like a teacher hack, my whiteboards, I went to Lowe's and I had them cut some tile boards for me. They're about 2 by 2, so they're pretty big, so I can do stoic problems on them. And they were a lot cheaper than buying like ones from the store, and a lot bigger than the ones you might buy from a teacher's store. So you might want to check that out. So just go to some hardware store if they have tile boards. And the guys there cut them for me. I was like, hey, can you please cut them for me? And they did. Okay. Another thing, I know we all do this, is a pair share. So as we're going through some content or we're like reviewing one of the worksheets or the practice tests, I'll say, hey, turn to your neighbor and explain how to do this problem. And then sometimes it's like crickets, like I don't hear anybody sharing. And then I'll be like, hey, if nobody's going to be sharing with your neighbor, then I'll just call on several people to explain. And then that usually does get them talking. I also have mentioned in the past, I really like rock, paper, scissors. It's a fun activity for the kids. Again, that's just a list of questions, and the kids play rock, paper, scissors to be able to answer the question, and whoever gets the most points then wins. And again, maybe a turtle stamp or a piece of candy. I like my quiz cards that I have, and I've mentioned those in the past. I also really like practice question sets. I call them task cards. So what I'll do is I'll make about 15, 20 questions. I'll put them around the room, and then the kids are up with a partner usually answering those questions. And then I have mixed feelings about Kahoot and Book It. I know the kids think that they're a lot of fun. If I had to choose which one over the other one, I like Kahoot better because I feel like I can stop and explain the answers or answer questions in between. I feel like Book It's maybe good for just like simple like memorization. The kids definitely have more fun with Book It, but I don't know if it's as educational. So if you guys use Book It and you're like, it's amazing, my students learn so much, please share with me, because I like want to use it because it's fun for the kids. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know if they're learning as much as they should be. So remember, before you take that exam with your kids, I usually try to reduce student panic by telling them, look, it's all the content that you've already seen. I'm going to give you that practice test a week ahead of time. So if you really need to do well on it, you can. I always tell them what their test is going to look like. And for me, it's we have an hour and a half, I think it's an hour and 45 minutes for our testing period. So I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, but I always give a 100-question test. And then depending on the level of the class, I'll make the short answers extra credit on the exam. So I usually have between 8 and 12 extra credit questions. And they're not like essay questions that I have to read. It's more like calculate the average atomic mass, draw me a picture of the atom, draw me a Bohr model, something like along those lines. That's pretty quick and easy to grade. And so you guys know as teachers, like the more you grade it, like the easier it is. So I usually try not to give too wordy of questions. Like I might say, what's the difference between an ion and an isotope? But I'm not looking for a paragraph there. So I'll do that to help make my grading go quicker. And then that way, if students don't finish the short answers the day of the exam, then I can be like, well, they're extra credit, so it's not a big deal. So it kind of encourages students to work through things quickly, but then it doesn't hurt their overall grade. I always remind students, besides looking at that practice test I gave them, to look at their old tests and quizzes, and then especially those warm-up questions, because those warm-up questions really are like building or like the big ideas for each unit. I always encourage them to sleep over studying. I tell them like, hey, if you've already studied for 2 hours that night and it's midnight, I would rather you go to sleep at midnight than to study for another 2 hours and not fall asleep until 2 o'clock. And then I always remind them to try to eat and make sure that they're drinking something, and just let them know that they've got this, and that if they did the practice test, if they are doing the studying in class, that they will do well. So I hope that this episode was helpful, just giving you some ideas that maybe you hadn't heard before, or just like, oh, okay, that's how I can organize my class this year for semester exams. As always, guys, please keep experimenting, inspiring, and being awesome in your chemistry classroom. And one last thing, if you guys are doing something awesome, in your class for semester exams, please let me know, and I would love to share it with everybody who listens to this podcast so we can all be more awesome together. Happy teaching.